Good morning to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack here. It is now Thursday, the 8th of August, 2024. Been up since about 4:30 this morning, hence the bags under the eyes. Went out looking for signs of Debbie's presence in eastern North Carolina, some flooding, and I found it. I'll show you that in just a moment. Kind of underscoring the fact, again, that rain is an impact. So we got to deal with Debbie still, and then we've got this new area to watch. And I think the lid is getting ready to come off, and we're going to have a stretch here of several weeks, maybe even a couple of months or more, of basically constant activity to watch in the Atlantic Basin. All of those seasonal forecasts look like everything's going to be on point, and we've got to be ready. We've got to do everything we can, whatever that means for your particular situation. You got to be aware, you got to take action, and your first, very most important thing is to keep yourself safe. So hopefully this kind of information out ahead of time will help you do so. Trying to inform you. There's a lot going on, a lot of outside influences on all of our lives. We've got to pay attention to the weather, especially when it's something like hurricanes that we have such ample warning for in advance. All right, so there's my monologue. All right, so let's get started. First, well, the heat is still going pretty strong down here in the deep south, Florida included. Even excessive heat warnings over here in parts of the Panhandle. And then we've got all the influences over here from Debbie. The impacts, tropical storm made landfall. Rain is the biggest issue, and tornadoes. I believe it was Wilson, North Carolina that was hit by a tornado. There's been other ones down here. And that's a big problem. These tropical cyclones do produce tornadoes in some of those rain bands. This is what it looks like on radar scope. And this right here, let's see, I'll use white to make everything pop out. There is our tornado watch currently. And then we've got the blue area that indicates our convective mesoscale discussion from the Storm Prediction Center. One tornado warning right now as I record this video. These are those bands still coming in. The center of circulation, I don't know, probably somewhere in here. But then a very large comma-shaped rain shield. Tropical with some subtropical characteristics. But I'm going to tell you what, I've been out here in it. It's very warm. It still has that warm core, just not a lot of deep convection around it. But that does not matter. The thunderstorms and the heavy rain bands all through here, these are what do matter and have mattered over the last several hours through yesterday and even the last few days. Ever since this made landfall down near Steinhatchee, Florida. What was it, on Monday? And here we are at almost the end of the week here on Thursday. So radar scope, I'm just going to put this into motion for you to show you what this looks like. And yeah, it's all tracking through Raleigh, Durham, Greensboro, Chapel Hill area down to Charlotte. I'll tell you something, if you're trying to fly from Charlotte out of Raleigh, so CLT, RDU, or ILM, I don't want to say you can forget it, but your chances are going to be probably slim to none, and I think none has already left town. So, yeah, just God help you. A lot of patience. You're going to need it. So that's what's happening with Debbie. The yellows, the tornado watch. These red areas are your flash flood warnings. North Carolina getting socked once again. So here's a little bit of the, prove it. Show you what's happening. Rain is an impact. This is my work from just a couple of hours ago. North Carolina 701, not far from Clarkton. That right there, my friends, is a car right there. I'll show you that in a much closer, more personal setting in just a moment. The technology from the drone is just amazing, where we can see the impacts like we've never seen them before. I know this isn't new, but it is always amazing how we can show you our world of weather when it impacts us negatively. These people here, they're trying to, well, let's get the darn thing to work. They're trying to get to work. Speaking of working, there's my vehicle. They're trying to get up to Elizabethtown, and they couldn't do so because of this flooding. And one lady, she was a nurse, this guy a trucker, and it's just not worth it. You could lose your vehicle, you could lose your life, potentially. There's all kinds of nastiness in the water, from chemicals to reptiles and things like that. This car tried and failed. And I'm assuming that they were rescued. Obviously, we don't see anybody in there, which is great. I don't think I could really live with that if, yuck, right? But yeah, this is what it looks like. And I think what they were trying to do was get across, and there's a little bit of motion to this water this way. and it was just enough to float the vehicle off the center line. They were trying, but you know what? They were doing it at night. I got out there and it was still dark. I arrived at, I don't know, like 5:45 a.m., something like that. This happened over the nighttime hours, and I just cannot even imagine. I'm sure there was a call to 911, and I guess they got rescued from some kind of a swiftwater rescue from that region. But it just goes to show you, we've seen this over and over and over again. I don't like it. Remember the Michael Scott meme? Don't like it, not one little bit, whatever he said from The Office. That's not good. You can't be doing that. So, come on, common sense. Hopefully they're okay. Their car, no longer. All right, again, just kind of emphasizing what Debby will be doing over the next several days. It's going to move up through the northeast here and cause another major flood risk across parts of the Appalachians into upstate New York, parts of Vermont. And the high risk today is in the pink area. And then we see that covers through tomorrow morning. This goes through Saturday morning. And then finally, we start to rid the pattern, at least in the lower 48, of Debby. After quite the legacy it has left, and it's only early August. Let me draw your attention now to this post. This is very important stuff coming up, so I need you to pay attention. All right, we got a lot of people out there that track hurricanes. They're into the weather. They watch everything very closely. And I try to find those people and highlight some of the things that they are saying. I don't want to just be, I know everything. I know a lot, but I don't know everything. And there's other people that are looking at a lot more stuff than I am. And we can kind of aggregate all of that. That is one of the positives of social media. And here we go. So I've mentioned Danny Morris before. Is Danny a meteorologist? No, Danny is a CPA down in Florida. But Danny knows hurricanes, and he's on top of it. So this is a very important post. So let's get to it. At some point, the lid will come off, Danny says. The ECMWF, that's the Euro, is hinting at that. The MJO, also known as the Madden-Julian Oscillation, forcing, that's the upper part of the atmosphere where it allows for the tropical convection to get going, looks quite potent. I would expect a busy stretch of tropical cyclone activity coming up. And we can see that in the Hofmoeller diagram here. What exactly in the world are we looking at? If you think about all of this color and then where it is down here in the tropics. Okay, there's like a Mercator projection strip map, and this is telling you where, and this is your when in time. So this is the present up at the top, this is the future down at the bottom, and all you need to know is all of this greenish color through here is very favorable for forcing an upward motion in the atmosphere, so we'll put positives there. That's favorable, and this is all negative. Where does that negative stretch? And yeah, it looks like it's going to be in the Atlantic, right? You see that there, but don't let that fool you. Don't let that fool you. The upward motion is going to be happening over the Indian Ocean and Africa, and then that will send these active tropical waves into the Atlantic, where they will have a really stout chance of developing. And then the forcing might not be there. Then it comes down to smaller, I don't want to say mesoscale, but kind of synoptic scale. We're talking meteorology stuff here. I don't want to get over your head. But this is what is the most important. This gets everything started. That's your assembly line. And then we deal with troughs and ridges, upper level lows, shear, whatever. And that will be how we watch everything going forward. All right, but the bottom line is this map, and it is a map at the bottom anyway, this chart, this Hofmoeller diagram. For those of you that know, that is a very busy signal coming up. And then, of course, the background state about as favorable as you could ever look for when you're trying to figure out, well, what makes a busy season? Well, this does, right here. And to that end, nothing on the 48-hour graphical tropical weather outlook, but once you expand it to the next 7 days, here's our new area of interest. 30% now. This is almost certain to go up. We are starting to erode away that dry air out here. There's still quite a bit of it out there, but it's getting to be less and less. And I can show you that on the satellite animation today. First of all, there's Debby now over North Carolina. Lots of moisture still being pulled into that. Speaking of upper level lows, there's one right there. And then we've got our intertropical convergence zone out here, somewhat of a monsoon trough. And then, yes, there is still some dust. You can see it outlined, dust and dry air. And again, you can't see the dry air per se, but you can see the lack of deep convection through here indicates that there is dry air out there. But there are also pieces of energy out here, tropical waves. And I'm going to tell you something, even though they do not develop out here or even here, that's bad because that means they develop later and they have less of a chance. Let's say something develops right there, south of the Cabo Verde Islands. It's got a better chance of getting up with that mid-latitude or mid-oceanic trough into the higher to mid-latitudes, and out it goes. If they all did that and they all formed off the coast of Africa, very few would make it across. When they start later, somewhere in this vicinity and points west, then we have a problem because, hey, look, that's where all of us live, or at least most of us that are interested in what happens from the tropics. But at least for now, nothing to worry about, but it looks like things are going to start to change and become much more favorable as we get ever closer to that August 20th benchmark there where we ring the bell, as Dr. Bill Gray has said, the late, great Dr. Gray many years ago. So there's the energy out across the deep tropics, nothing coalescing just yet. That's the energy associated with Debby, Gulf Caribbean, nice and clear. A little bit of energy here in the eastern Pacific, and we do have a couple of areas there. Let me just go back to the National Hurricane Center homepage. Let's don't ignore the East Pac. After all, we had a flurry of activity out there, but none of them have made it to major hurricane status yet. Carlotta was a hurricane briefly. Amelia is out here dying away. We've got another area that's trying to develop. It's only got 30% chance over the next 7 days. And, once the East Pac completely shuts down, the Atlantic is going to get very, very busy. So here's the Euro, the ECMWF that Danny Morris there was talking about in his post. And I'm going to take this out to 10 days. I want to show you what the Euro is showing. Let me show you what we got. This is the 0Z run. Let me use red up here so it pops better. 0Z, 850 millibars, so 5,000 feet in the atmosphere. And it's that vorticity. There is the loosely developed vorticity, defined, whatever you want to call it, from Debby. It's not all concentrated. It's kind of spread out. And real quick, I think that's interesting to point out. There it is there on the model. It's kind of spread out. Looks like concentric circles, bunch of bullseyes, whatever. And then that's what it looks like on satellite. It's kind of unwound. It's still a tropical system. Some dry air has punched into it, whatever. Still very potent with all the moisture it does have. But it's not all bundled up and intense around a deep convective center like a hurricane would have. And so that's what that looks like on the model there. This is the Euro. I just think that's fascinating when you can see in real life how these things work out. So what I want you to do is pay attention. There's a piece of energy there. There's more coming off Africa. But just watch this area as I move through the next several days here on the Euro. And we're going to go all the way out to 10 days because there's some very valid points to show you here. So let's just scroll it on through. By the way, the energy from Debby over here does make it up into the northeast United States and finally into parts of Canada. And out it goes, but a big rainmaker for sure. Let's don't lose sight of that fact. Now we're out to 72 hours. Let's stop it for a second. Piece of energy there. There's another tropical wave, and there's even more lined up over Africa. So these pieces come out. They get more energized. They find moisture. And the Euro at about day 5, this is a very important time frame here. There's your big old subtropical ridge sitting out over the Atlantic. There's the amplification of our first tropical wave. There's another one trying to come along. And let's watch what happens, especially with that front runner. That's day 5. Let's take it out to day 6. There's 144 hours. Starting to blossom just south of Puerto Rico. And then by day 7, it comes across the Greater Antilles into the Turks and Caicos. And by days 8, 9, and 10, the Euro would suggest, anyway, that we have a potent tropical system off the southeast coast by day 10. And look at the date. This is important. Still pre-August 20th. And I know it's only the 18th. And you go, well, come on. Let's round it up. Call it August 20th. No. Literally, August 20th is almost like this magic moment in the atmosphere and the way it all works with the ocean. And things get lit up in any given season. Even when you got a big El Nino, any activity typically starts to blossom after August 20th. Though we've already had Debby, and this could be the E, the F, and maybe the G storm. Yeah, that's a little bit of a stretch, but let's just pretend that it would be. and it's not even August 20th yet, yeah, you can see why Danny said what he said, that the lid is about to come off. The GFS, and at least these are in agreement with each other, very similar. It gets started earlier. By day 6, a potential threat of a tropical cyclone through the Lesser Antilles down here, the Northeast Caribbean. And if we take this out to day 10, the GFS, now remember, this is 10 days out, suggesting a weakness in this ridge over here. It's kind of like a valley between two mountains, right? And our system could go right on out. But that's 10 days away. We don't know. We don't know. But what we do know is that the background state already pretty favorable. And then as we go forward, as we looked at earlier, the upward motion, the forcing is going to get into place. We're going to start to really work out that dry air. And then the pattern should just be favorable for hurricane after hurricane to get going. And that's going to be problematic. And we're going to have to look at it from a lot of different perspectives, not just whether or not they're going to hit land. I tell you, the fish comments are coming. You know it. Oh, it's a fish storm. Who cares? Whatever. They still send swells to the beaches of North America and the Caribbean islands. Those swells lead to big waves, and those big waves can lead to neck and back injuries, people drowning out there, the rip current threats. It's all about the impacts, okay? And it doesn't matter if it doesn't directly impact you. It could be impacting someone else. And, you know, granted, whoever drove that car that I showed you in the drone video should have known better, but they're having a very bad day because of a weak tropical storm. And again, I know they shouldn't have done that, but that doesn't change the fact that it has impacted them. So just look at it that way. Yes, it can impact you personally, and even if it doesn't, it could impact somebody else. So a potential hurricane, hypothetically, in the model here at day 10, off the coast, you know, comfortably, and there's Bermuda there, that's going to send swells out, and that does become a problem. So we've got to look at everything, not just whether or not a hurricane is going to hit you. All right? Finally, I guess we already addressed this. Good site, by the way, Weather Prediction Center. This is where you have all your especially hydrologic information in your fronts map. That looks like an old-timey map, doesn't it? One of those, well, there we go. Like from a long time ago. That's what I was trying to say. Whatever. So that's it. I've got everything across to you that I wanted to today. I got to go get a nap. It's going to be a long day. Going to do some hits with Fox Weather later. And then I got to work on a bunch of other projects. We have equipment to get ready and make sure we are all set on our end to deliver the very best possible field updates that we can when that time comes once again. Debbie, a good warm-up. We had Beryl before that in early July, and a lot more coming after all of that. All right? You guys have a good rest of your Thursday from all of us at HurricaneTrack, our awesome community out there on YouTube, on Patreon, Twitter, and I'm trying to fire up my Instagram again, by the way, so follow HurricaneTrack on Instagram. We're going to do a lot more with that, kind of like a running diary of stories and posts. I just got to get used to it again. And anyway, you get the idea. We're on the social media to some extent, and we appreciate you following along. Have a good rest of your Thursday. I'll see you again tomorrow morning.